It seems that the climate gabfest in Egypt isn't going too well because richer countries, for once, aren't following the hard left script. Climate change is the greatest moral challenge of our times, that the West is to blame, and that we all need to dole out billions to poor countries to atone for the sins of the Industrial Revolution around 200 years ago. That's the script. Now, I've said for years and years, this isn't about the weather. This is about wealth transfer, and always has been. And that's the view of the former editor-in-chief of the Australian newspaper, Chris Mitchell, in his column today. Mitchell bells the cat, pointing out that all along, the real agenda of these annual COP meetings has been wealth transfer, he says, from the first world to poorer nations. The demand, reiterated for a decade now, has been the establishment of a $100 billion a year fund. That's right, $100 billion each and every year for so-called loss and damage supposedly suffered by poor countries because of climate change caused by the historical energy use of rich countries. But this is now being rejected even by some of the most climate-conscious world leaders. Joe Biden's climate envoy, John Kerry, said it's not fully defined. There are all kinds of different views on what it could be. No one can sign up to something on it, not yet. Boris Johnson, the host of last year's COP meeting in Glasgow, has said that Britain simply lacked the resources to pay climate reparations. Besides, as Mitchell reports, China has emitted more carbon dioxide in the past 8 years than Britain has since the start of the Industrial Revolution. And here's the detail that proves it. 78 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide in the UK between 1750 and 2020. Versus 80 billion tonnes from China between 2013 and 2020. Now, sooner or later, the facts will always trump ideology. Two facts in particular. First, the world is going to need fossil fuels for a long, long time to come. As Mitchell pointed out, even the Biden administration expects 70% of the world's energy to come from fossil fuels in 2050. Which is not so different from now, with wind and solar, Mitchell says, accounting for only around 10% of global energy use, despite an annual investment over the past decade or so of around $1 trillion annually on renewables. And the second, well, there's no climate emergency. Even in the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports, there's a direct contradiction of the code red rhetoric we've seen from the climate catastrophists and the consequent lurid reporting. As Mitchell pointed out, most islands in the Pacific are growing, not shrinking, and cyclones and hurricanes, it seems, are becoming less frequent rather than more so. If climate change really is the imminent planetary doom that so many third world leaders still pretend, why isn't there climate anger directed at China, the world's biggest emitter by far, rather than the West? Still, facts are taking a long time to sink through here. Energy companies like AGL and Origin are still talking about closing down all their coal-fired power generation within a decade. I say it again, why is the West shutting down its reliable energy options at the very time its biggest strategic threat, China, is only using more and getting stronger? If climate change really is the world's biggest problem, then the world would be tackling China on this issue rather than, as is currently the case, giving them a leave pass to emit more and more for decades to come. And that's the real cop-out of this COP meeting in Egypt.